And now I'm pleased to introduce Liz Ryan. She's the President, Governance, Risk, and Compliance of Sapphire Enterprises. She's from our DC chapter and is currently our steering committee co-chair, helping to lead the charge there in DC. So Liz, thank you so much for getting our speakers prepared for today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Angela. I'm very excited to be for the discussion today. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to start out with having each of the panelists introduce themselves and just give us a short overview of the company and how you've changed your business practices over the past couple of months in working with COVID. So Michael, do you want to start off and give us a quick introduction?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Parisi. I'm the CFO of Scholson Collective, which is a restaurant group based out of Philadelphia. We have 10 restaurants, or 12 restaurants and a catering company. And right now we have about 7 restaurants operating at some type of new limited capacity and operations. I've been here for 4+ years now. Started out, I was brought on when we had 3 restaurants, and we've grown pretty quickly in the 4 years. And pre-COVID, we were operating on all cylinders, building out 2 restaurants and negotiating leases for 2 more, which we would have potentially opened 4 restaurants this year. It was on pace to be our record year. Things were going really well. We had 1,500 employees. And then COVID hit. We shut down completely on March 15th. That was our last day of ops. The city of Philly shut down 2 days later. We went from 1,500 employees to 3. And for about 3 to 4 weeks, it was 3 employees just managing some accounting and dealing with unemployment and just going through that process. Once the city started to allow takeout and delivery, we pretty much completely changed our business model. Because at our restaurants, it's all about what we call getting butts in seats. And so we don't do takeout at all. We've never done it. We don't want to do it. But we said, you know what? We don't have a choice to do it. It's survival mode and we got to figure things out. So we started doing takeout and delivery. And then the city started to allow outdoor dining. So we pivoted and came up with some outdoor dining ideas, things like that. And now we're up to outdoor dining as it's starting to get cold and rainy, with some limited capacity indoor dining. And, we're just going through and trying to figure it out. Pretty much in our industry, there's new restrictions put on us every day. There's fear in society about, catching COVID and everything like that. And in the restaurant industry, we're just trying to navigate it and make people feel as comfortable as they can to be able to go out, spend some time with friends, but do it safely, do it comfortably, while also keeping our staff feeling comfortable and safe at the same time. So that's a little bit of my story.
All right, great, thank you. Jimmy, do you want to tell us your story next?
Sure. My name is Jimmy Williams. I'm the president and CEO of the Washington Literacy Center. So when this started, the beginning of the year, we started off very optimistic. And then by March, there was just a major turn in our operations. For example, we serve roughly in-house, roughly between 150 to 200 people. Our serving area is much wider than that in terms of people we touch. We were on the bounce back. We had planned a fundraiser, so we were pretty optimistic about that. We were scheduled to move to a new and larger location, so we were in negotiations with that. But we were full speed ahead in terms of what we were planning, and we already had cemented our agenda and what we were doing for the year. And then when COVID hit, it was just a major stop. So we had to form crisis management teams, but a total redefinition in what we were doing in terms of our focus, our budget, our fundraising, our mission, and how we were attempting to achieve that mission and who we were going to serve. So I know we'll talk about that later, but I can tell you in terms of true 180s for a nonprofit, we are doing well and we're surviving, but it really meant calibration in probably every sense of the word in all aspects and just a major readjustment on every plan that we had.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's true across the board. Thank you, Jimmy. And Eric, you're next. Why don't you give a quick introduction?
Great. Thanks, Liz. Eric Dean, glad to be here. I'm the president of IMC Digital Innovations, which is a division of International Market Centers. Coming to you from Northern Virginia. Our offices are completely still remote, so everybody in our company still is working from home. So International Market Centers is the world's largest owner and operator of showroom space for furniture, giftware, home decor, and the apparel industry. We own and operate about 20 million square feet of exhibition space in Las Vegas, High Point, North Carolina, and Atlanta. So what that really means is that we are a very large exhibition company. So we're the epitome of a company that's been disrupted by COVID, because we put on large events where anywhere from 5 to 50,000 people come together and meet. So if there's a business that's been disrupted, we're there. Digital Innovations, the division that I run, is only about 9 months old. So it was formed in January to basically address the changing patterns where people were moving from solely face-to-face meetings to having a stronger digital element. And I came in as part of a acquisition. I sold my company to International Market Centers, and along with another company, we formed the Digital Innovations division. What's going on after we started the company in January, and we had a plan a nice plan that we had set up. And about 2 months into it, COVID hit and everything changed, because our core business, these trade shows that we put on and these exhibitions that we put on, ground to a complete halt. And we went from having sort of a plan that was more long-term and strategic to gradually institute digital elements to the business, to one where we had to step in right away and significantly impact and protect the core business. International Market Centers is a portfolio company of the Blackstone Group. So there's a very strong private equity element to this as well, which always makes things interesting. Blackstone is as an active PE management company. So what we have been doing is accelerating our plan to come out with some digital elements that can reinforce the physical trade shows. We've moved a lot of our events online. We've come up with some pieces that can be transferred there. It's trying to do everything very, very quickly. We have been able to get back. We've had some physical shows. I just got back from High Point, North Carolina, the International Furniture Market. So we have gone back to some shows with full COVID protocols. So I'm happy to talk through that. But just one other interesting thing is that in addition to having to pivot very quickly, we've been forced to grow a company. We came across the company had about 40 people. My division had 40 people. We're now at about 130. So we've hired 90 people during the time of COVID. Almost all of them have not met anybody face to face. So it's a really unique environment that we're working in, and it's been a challenge, but I think it's a time that any of us working in these times are never going to forget. Thanks. Agreed.
Thank you. Yeah, these are some fascinating stories. Now, how have you taken your business to market? Now, I know a lot of companies are taking a step back and they need to revamp their go-to-market strategy. How is that looking on your end? Michael, do you want to start there?
Yeah. So for the first time ever, we started to do paid advertising, which we've never done before, and we also had to sit down and identify which customer, which guest was going to actually come out during COVID, who was going to be comfortable, right? And how could we make that appealing and attractive to them? One from, I'll kind of skip the takeout and delivery piece, because we basically did that based off of reputation. People still wanted our food. They would call up, get it online, get it delivered. As long as we were open, we were getting some kind of business. Some restaurants we opened for a month and closed down. It just wasn't taking. They wanted to be, it felt like they preferred to be at the restaurant more than just getting the food and taking it home. But there are others, once outdoor dining started, where we had to sit down and go, all right, well, our demographic was X and now it's Y, because that's all who's out. And what are we going to do to attract them? How are we going to get them to know that we're open and to come? Because when everybody shut down, you don't really know who's open. Unless you can get a little press, you could do some articles, some PR, things like that. So we tried everything. We were doing paid ads on social media. Our CEO, Michael Schulzen, was doing some PR stuff, and we just wanted to let everybody know, hey, these are the restaurants we have open, and we're here for you. Come try to have some kind of normal in a time where there is no normal. And essentially, that's what we did for our go-to-market strategy, and then it's evolved each day since.
Great. So what was the response? So if you changed and you went to social media, I mean, how did that impact business, and how did you bring the customer back?
So I would say the response for some locations that geared more towards millennials in that 25 to 35-year-old range was really strong and positive.
Mhm.
And those restaurants that were already geared towards them started doing okay, and they started to survive and could sustain. Others that were geared towards a little bit of an older demographic, they didn't pick up as quickly, but are now starting to gain some traction. So they struggled a little bit in the beginning, but revenue started to grow as it got nicer out. And in Philly, in the summer, it's like a ghost town in Philadelphia. Everybody leaves to go to the shore, but this year they didn't. Even though the shores were packed and it was good, a lot of people stayed home. Which helped. So.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jimmy, do you want to share with us how you changed your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, and a lot of people think because we're a nonprofit, we don't have one, but that's quite the contrary. A lot of what we do, we have to reach out to stakeholders, fundraisers, individual donors, corporate donors, as well as just to general people that we want to educate about what we do, as well as recipients of our services. So at one time where a lot of it was, I think at a much slower pace, we found out that we ramped it up. I mean, everything from paid advertising through Facebook, through Google. Those are things we typically did at a much slower rate. But we found that not only did we have to market, but we had to market what we do. So the type of marketing we did the more where we are, what we're doing. And the one thing I quickly found out, it was not only of the touchy-feely type of marketing, but we also had to really let people know that, yes, we are sustaining, but then we had to really focus on the demographic to tell them what we need and more specific of how we're helping people. So during this time, people didn't want to know that we were doing poorly. They wanted to know how we were surviving and how were we helping. So it was a complete allocation in total of how we funded and in terms of the type. So there was an increase in video marketing, written newsletters, and use of MailChimp and other types of outreach, but complete evolution in terms of our messaging.
Wow, thank you. Eric, do you want to share with us your changes in your go-to-market strategy?
Sure. It was really a combination of some immediate tactical things that we needed to do, and then also an acceleration of a more long-term strategic direction. So on the tactical side, we had these events that were being canceled, and we still had our audiences that we had to serve. So a lot of the things that come along, even if you can't put on a trade show where people are conducting business, and all of our business is business to business, and it's all on the commercial side, no government. There's still a lot of other things that happen there. There's seminars that go on, there's educational elements. So immediately moving those online were one of the things that we did, just as a way to try to continue to serve our audience. In addition, we use some technology to try to plug that gap of, at our core, we look at our business as connecting buyers and sellers. We try to bring them together. Traditionally, that's been in a face-to-face environment. But we said, what are the other ways that we can do that? So using some technology, including some pieces that we had, which weren't quite, I wouldn't say they were market ready, but we knew we had a hole in the wall. We had to plug the hole. So we got them very quickly together. So there was, and put them in place so they could be serving. So there was a lot of sort of very quick tactical actions to just try to create some continuity. We didn't want to just go dark with our audience. We were not allowed to have shows. We're not allowed to have trade shows, and they're still severely restricted in a number of areas. So we didn't want to go a year or 2 years without serving our audience. So what are the things we could do? And most of those revolved around digital. So, for my division, we had only been with the company for a couple of months. We certainly became pretty popular. I think a really important point, though, is we're also accelerating, which is one of the most important strategic directional changes that we're looking at. And that's of redefining how we look at ourselves and the value that we give, but also trying to change our customers' perception of the value we give. So traditionally, it's been, if you go to a trade show, how was your show? How much did you sell? How many people did you meet? It's a very quantitative thing. And we're really looking at changing that definition, how we perceive ourselves and how the definition of how our customers perceive the value that we give, to what is the 365-day value of the relationships that we have? What are the pieces that we're connecting digitally at the show through the education? So just trying to very much broaden the value definition of sort of what value International Market Centers brings to the game. So it's both a combination of very quick tactical things, which we continue to do, but also trying to make sure that we're aligned on a permanent strategic directional change.
Now, I would think, going through these changes, how did you get people on board with the shift and the pivot?
Well, it's a combination of really trying to mobilize the entire team. So, within our company, we've got salespeople who have communications with customers. We've got relationship managers that have it. We've got a fairly large marketing group that goes out to both sides, both the exhibitor, buyer, seller side of our equation, as well as the buyer attendee side of our equation. Then it was a matter of trying to mobilize all those forces and get everybody speaking with a new message with the same voice, and that's hard. And it's particularly hard when all of a sudden on, like my fellows here, we, on March 13th, we shut down our offices and everybody went remote. It wasn't particularly hard for the digital side of the business, but for the rest of the business, this is the first time they've ever done this. It wasn't a group that worked from home. So there's a lot of challenge in getting people aligned on the message. But the key there is to keep it simple. Just to say, here's what we stand for. Here's how we're going to make sure that we have continuity in the things that we're going to do. Try not to be overly ambitious and try to do too much, and above all, stay on message. And we tried to push that out through social media. We pushed it out through email. We pushed it out with the phone conversations. There's a real concerted effort for people to get on the phone and talk to customers, because all of our customers were going through severe challenges here. They were companies that their supply chain had been completely messed up. They were, their business, their customers, we're in a business to business. So, we're serving retailers, interior designers. Their customers at that time had gone, basically, they had to shut down their businesses as well. So there was a tremendous amount of stress and strain. So we felt like over communicate was key and try to have a consistent message and deliver it across all the channels.
Okay, great, thanks. Now, you mentioned supply chain, and so I'm sure that there's been some level of disruption there, or at least many, many changes depending on how the suppliers are managing in COVID. So Michael, do you want to talk to us a bit about supply chain and how you manage that in the restaurant business?
Yeah, sure. So supply chain for us has been difficult in ways. I think earlier we were chatting before this all started, and as an example, there's a huge tequila shortage, right? So to get your hands on things like tequila or beef or certain things where COVID shuts down plants, shipping issues, all that kind of stuff really throws a wrench in what we're trying to do. So we have to pivot each day, come up with menu items where we have product, things like that, but make it appealing to people so that they still want to come and things like that. So a lot of our suppliers normally get the same types of products, and it's all about pricing on who you purchase from. That shifted to who has it and how much do they have, and can we work out deals where we can buy it in bulk to make sure that at least we have it as a company for our restaurants, because we have many different concepts, but a lot of those concepts use a lot of the same things, from supplies to ingredients and things like that. But each day is different. There are new issues and hurdles to overcome in terms of the supply chain and products you can get and when you can get them and how often you can get them. And quite frankly, even the systems that are in place for you to order from. So in Pennsylvania, you have to buy all of your liquor and wine through the PLCB, which is a state-run program. So the state purchases all their inventory, and then everybody in the city or everybody in the state has to buy from them. Their purchasing system went down for a week,
Oh.
and they would not take orders over the phone. So you had to go based off of whatever you could get, or go to the liquor store and buy whatever you could off the shelf just to make it work. So there's things like that that you have to deal with on a regular basis now that wasn't regular before, wasn't common, and you just pivot and you figure it out and you move on from it, and then you put systems in place to deal with those things as they come up the next time. Because once they've come up once, you know they're coming again.
So what challenges did you face also? So now you've had to pivot towards takeout, and now you're managing the supply chain, and you had some staffing challenges. I mean, how did you get your folks or your team on board with and help them to, I guess, refocus their efforts?
Yeah, so I would say staffing has been the biggest struggle in the restaurants, right? A big factor is a little bit of fear, right? A little bit of fear of coming back and what that's going to be like, because these guys are frontline workers, they're dealing with guests, and we have to make sure that they felt comfortable. One, we had to put systems and processes in place, get enough PPE for them so that they felt safe. Because before you can make the guests feel safe, the staff has to feel comfortable and safe. So then they can portray those feelings onto the guests, right? So we were doing everything from getting hand sanitizer to masks to face shields, putting plexiglass up, anything we could do that our staff was like, all right, wow, these guys are going above and beyond for us, that we want to come work, right? And to be honest, everybody was on unemployment for at least a month. Right. And then when we got into takeout and delivery, it was very minimal staff. You had to operate it with bare bones staff to get that going, and then into outdoor dining, and then the indoor dining, you keep ramping up. And like I said in the intro, we were at 1,500 employees, dropped to 3. We're at about 300 now, which is nice to see. People are coming back to work. They're starting to get a bit more comfortable. And to be honest, people need to start making money again. Right. So you package all that together, and you got to provide them an environment where they feel comfortable and safe, and they also feel heard. They want to feel heard, and that their concerns that they have are being heard and then addressed at the same time. If you could do that, you're going to get people to come, and you're going to get them to stay. And those are some of the things that right now that's crushing our industry, because people are coming, and everybody thinks, man, it's just, if I can give them more money, they'll come, but they leave when they're not comfortable. So it's not just about getting, overpaying people per se, but it's also making them feel safe and comfortable, and that you care about them.
Okay. Yeah, agreed. Great. Thank you. And Jimmy, how are you working this in the not-for-profit world? And again, I'm sure you're seeing the same challenges around, getting your folks on board and changing the focus. And how have you handled this?
Well, a lot. And as Michael said, a good part of us, we really had to, when you're on the airplane, one of the things they say, you have to save yourself first before you can save anyone else. So we formed a crisis management team, and that was a team designed to get all voices on board and all the resources to make sure that we're able to quickly, thoughtfully, and pragmatically respond. The other issue was really focusing first on our employees and remembering they have families, they were traumatized by this event, and how do we prepare and mentally stabilize them before we can do anything else. And I can tell you that wasn't easy. So it meant deploying equipment to the employees' houses, not making assumptions that everyone had access to the internet. You have some employees with a family of 8 as opposed to someone with a family of 1, and maybe somebody who has outdated internet service and someone who has the super. So we really had a lot of connectivity, health issues to address, and really making sure that we first let them know we were responsive. And then before that, then it had to almost retrain employees. And how do we outreach? How do we connect? And ironically, hearing people talk about all the other businesses, well, businesses that supported us first, we had to train our employees how to empathize and really reach out to the businesses that we traditionally ask for help. Well, what can we do to help you? What are you experiencing? So I would say that there was just, I call it the 360 educational approach with our base employees first. And then that shifted to our customer centric, our customer, I call them customers and our recipients of our services. But then we had to roll out surveys, survey the employees, survey the people who we serve. And that informed us better in what we should do and what our next stage responses should be. I would note that as a nonprofit, what I've done, just because my previous career was actually business, is really reminding ourselves that even though we're nonprofit, and the back end is what makes us a nonprofit, but all of the mechanics and what we have to do to run what we do has to be run just like any other business. So a lot of our shifting is really putting on a business hat first, and then with the understanding that how we report is differently, but how we have to serve the recipients of our services is going to be unilaterally very similar. So hopefully that answers your question, Liz.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fantastic. Great. And it's actually, we also have a question from the audience. So Angela?
Yes, thank you. So question is, and I think this went to Michael, but I'm sure any of you can answer it or all of you can. Did you have any issues with employees not wanting to return as a result of the enhanced unemployment? Was that an issue?
I'll just take that one for now, and then you guys feel free to chime in. But for us, absolutely it did. Absolutely. People turned us down left and right because they were getting the extra 600 and they were very open about it. What they didn't realize was that we told them, well, if we offer you your job and you decline and don't have a reason that unemployment is acceptable with, you're going to get declined in the end. And people had no problem saying, great, by the time they decline me, I'll have had the money and used it, and I'll see you when everything returns back to normal. So it was a crazy time, and we had to sit back and go, okay, this is really affecting us. How do we get people to come back a different way? You know, what's mattering to some and what's mattering to others. And those are the people, like right now they're looking to come back to work. And unfortunately, we either have spots or we don't, you know, based on where our operations are today. And as we're allowed to open more, our staffing requirements will become greater and those needs will get filled. But at that moment that the $600 and the potential $300 is extra and out there, it's preventing a lot of people from wanting to come back to work.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody wanted to add to that? Or I'll move on to the next question. Now, in pivoting and training and bringing people up to speed, have you implemented any new tools in your processes? Eric, do you want to address that question?
Sure. You know, we sort of like we are today, we Zoom and, you know, trying to make the virtual meeting sort of the norm. We felt it's super important for us to be able to look at each other, particularly in a group that didn't really know each other, and we're trying to learn new ways. We're trying to do it in a time of, you know, great uncertainty and great you know, kind of fear for a lot of people. So, you know, just following on a theme that Jimmy and Michael said earlier is that, you know, it was critical for us to build trust. You know, we talked about building trust with our customers, but also trust with our internal team. So anything that we could do. So we absolutely ramped up our efforts to communicate, almost over communicate. We wanted to be very, very transparent, even in times when, you know, the story wasn't great in terms of sort of what the situation was. And even when we didn't know exactly what was going to happen next week and, you know, what the longer term outlook was going to be, what that would look like. We wanted to be as transparent as possible. And then as we started to build the team, we wanted to use a technique. I wanted to use a technique to try to explain why we were doing things, because we had in a group of, you know, everybody being remote and a lot of people being new, there's going to be a lot of very decentralized decision making there. So, you know, our company is made up of, it's a company of professionals, you know, from developers, marketers, salespeople, and we needed them to be able to make good decisions. So we wanted to explain the why we were doing things on the big picture, and why we were making some of the shorter term decisions that we were making. You know, it comes back in my deep, distant past. I was a soldier, and as a as a junior officer, when you're giving your operations orders, one of the things that is a technique that the Army taught was to give something they called commander's intent. And the deal there was, so you know what the general mission was or what the general objective was, so that anybody has that knowledge and can make a decision on their own without having to call up 3 levels to get permission or to understand. So I think it's just one of the best things I ever learned in the military. And I've tried to apply that in the business piece to the extent you can explain, this is where we're going and this is why we're going there.
Mhm.
If you hire the right people, they can make these kinds of decisions and apply that knowledge. So a technique that we use was try to really overemphasize that and make sure we're sharing why we're doing it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Jimmy, how about you? What new tools have you brought on board and have implemented with your team?
Well, we actually started many education series, and one of the things, we started, yoga at home and virtual wellness just for our team. The second, in addition to Zoom and those virtual meetings, we really did have to ramp up in terms of technology, as I mentioned earlier. But one odd thing is we found out how many people missed the office. So we even had scheduled people to come into the office to rotate in the office because they felt that they just had to have some limited human contact and some contact with the office. So we would have rotating teams, socially distanced with all the protections coming into the office. So I'd say this, between the mental and health and well-being, those classes, the mini classes, and in fact, in a week, we're going to have a health and wellness day just to make sure our employees felt that the team was connecting. It really did mean that in terms of in-person meetings, and which was still important, we just had to find a better and safer way to do it. And so I would say those 3 new tools, and especially the all-day health and wellness, that was something I really wasn't used to and hadn't thought of, but the feedback we got was great. And the final tool is that during our meetings, we'd have lunch meetings, but we would have to get people to donate funding, but we would have Uber Eats, or I forgot the other ones, deliver food, and we'd tell them, hey, by the way, lunch is being delivered to your house at between 11 and noon. Please be out there to receive it. I found the employees, their response to that was just more than what I expected. So a whole lot of personal touch tools that you really had to employ just to make sure your employees were able to continue doing their job. Of course, with children running around in the background and other issues, but it kept them really focused and feeling good and connected.
Okay, great. Michael, do you have anything to add as your at the tools you've been implementing?
Yeah, I mean, for us being in the restaurant and hospitality industry, we still very much had to be in the same brick and mortar that we always were, right? Whether it was takeout, and so for takeout and delivery, we implemented tools we never used before. Those online ordering, dealing with Caviar, DoorDash, and all that stuff. So that was new to us, and we had to jump on it quickly, figure it out really quickly, and then just get moving and market it. Like I said before, we did paid advertising. We started ramping up social media and using these online platforms in a world where we were very hands-on and in front of the guests and guest-facing constantly. And in that sense, even our office staff, the limited staff we had been able to keep on, came back to the office with the exception of 1 or 2 people, just to feel like we wanted to provide. First, we made sure that they felt comfortable doing so, and we took all precautions, but we wanted to let every restaurant and every staff member in those restaurants know that you're here and we will be too, right? To kind of give them that, like, we support you, we're here from you. I'm not going to do it from home. I'm going to do it right here with you so you don't feel like you're alone in this game. And, so there's some of the tools that we had to put into place that we've never to figure out and deal with before.
Great. No, I can appreciate that. And so I've heard all of our panelists talk about the shift into digital. And so in making that shift into digital, was there a shift in capital and where you were putting your capital? Eric, do you want to address this one?
I can address it more sort of at a higher level from our company. So, part of the decision for International Market Centers and Blackstone to make the investment that they did in our digital innovations division was to look at a longer term pattern. So this was happening, a pattern of behavior change was going on long before COVID. And that part of it was to shift some of the capital allocation to the digital to be ready when that shift got to critical mass. What we found is that there was incredible acceleration of that trend that happened with COVID. In some cases, you're looking at 10 years of behavior change happened in 3 months. So when the decision was made, certainly to ramp up, to make sure that all of our efforts are fully funded. At the same time, our core business owns 20 million square feet of commercial real estate. So, this is, we're not sure exactly where the pendulum comes back when things return to whatever the new normal is. But we do know that it's, that what it looked like on March 10th this year, it's never going to look that way again. So I think what we're going to continue to see is that the allocation is going to, the mix of what was more of the traditional business to the digital is going to continue to skew towards the digital. And, that's good for us in the digital division, but we need to make sure that we're serving our customer across all the channels that we touch them.
Okay, great. So Michael, how about you?
So it's interesting. We've shifted capital depending upon our restaurant location is what we decided to do. Some of them we closed because doing the math, we would lose more money staying open in predicting what kind of revenue you would do based on the customer base and the size of the restaurant and things like that. So we closed them and we try to negotiate, lease abatements and deferments and things like that to conserve cash, right? And we went into a full cash conservation mode across our entire company. And then what we did was, okay, we could do outdoor dining in the summer. It started June 12th. Great. What's going to happen in October? What happens when it rains on a Friday and Saturday? Because if it rains on a Friday and Saturday, you get crushed that week. Well, all it needs to do is rain on one of those days and you lose money that week. And you only lose money for so long before it starts dipping into reserves and things like that to deplete them quicker than you anticipated. So we took capital and we started building outdoor structures with the city's approval to be able to maintain. We're going to try and heat them and devote some capital to heating those structures and things like that. And then we also took some capital and started investing it back in our employees with providing them with winterized uniforms, essentially. Like before it was all for inside, and our restaurants are very comfortable inside, so they could dress appropriately, but now they're outside and it's freezing. So hats and gloves and jackets and more PPE and things like that. And then we're also taking some capital, and we have to look at opportunities if there are some out there, because it's part of my job and responsibility, and why I was brought on was to not only go into, cash conservation mode and, crisis prevention and all that stuff, but look for opportunities. You can't stop looking for opportunities and things like that, they don't happen tomorrow, but they're going to be available, and investors will really appreciate the fact that you're managing the cash very well and not going to them for help, but then also saying, okay, well, this opportunity is coming up and here's what it looks like.
Right. And and Jimmy, how about you? I know in the not-for-profit world, I'm sure there's been a lot of changes about where you're putting the funding that you're coming into, and it also sounds like you've also made a shift from brick and mortar over to digital too. And how did that impact your where you're focusing the funds?
Well, for us, it was a major shift. We're nonprofit, so we try to do everything we can and with frugality. But we went from using the freebie Microsoft Teams and not really heavily relying on anything to a sudden shift towards Zoom, and then finding the hard way we needed Zoom licenses, which have a cost, and that almost all of our employees needed them because they were out doing individual work. So I would say in terms of infrastructure, nothing will test your computer and tell you how slow a processor is and what you're doing that doesn't work, and speakers and mics and low resolution cameras from your old 10-year-old and 15-year-old laptops. So in a lot of cases, it meant technological upgrades that we were kicking the can down the road we had to focus on with urgency. Purchases of Zoom licenses, updates of computers, were, cameras. And then even in the meantime, green screens that I didn't know what it was until then. So a whole lot of other shifts. But then, as both Eric and Mike said, even long-term planning, which is harder to do. Now we, in terms of, with our finance team, where meetings will occur not as often, they're almost weekly, because we're looking, how many laptops do we need in the future? What are our other technological needs? And I've learned new terms for connectivity that I had no idea prior to this time, and what those costs are. Like voice over IP, we had an old digital system, and suddenly now everybody's talking voice over IP. I had no idea.
Yeah, those are a lot of changes. So for 2021, now we talked a lot about long-term planning and shifting capital. And what does 2021 look like? Eric, do you want to tell us about what you're planning?
Yeah, well, 2021, was originally sort of the year that we were going to launch our big, we were going to build things in 2020, and we're going to have our launch in 2021. And of course, everything changed. And we launched some things way early, and some other things have been delayed. What we're looking for is we're trying to take into account what we think 2020, some predictions on what 2021 is going to look like. We don't know exactly when a vaccine arrives. Given the nature of our business is that we put on these large scale face-to-face events, until there's a more solid sound where the entire community is comfortable, it's going to materially affect our business. Now, what that means for my division is it's good, because digital is going to have to step in there and plug some of that gap. So we're trying to understand in 2021, and our forecasts are, and based on the assumption that we're going to still be in a period of some disruption for the majority of 2021, and based on that, we're going to allocate more capital to digital. We're going to make sure, and our operational costs of putting on our events is significantly higher in a COVID world because of the precautions and the protocols that are put in place. So we are definitely planning next year on operating. We're going to return to as normal as we can, but we know that 2021 is not going to look like 2019.
Right. Michael, how about the restaurant business? What does 2021 look like for you?
I'm not gonna lie, we have no idea. we have no idea. The city and the state, they play a big role in what we can and can't do. And so far, they haven't rolled back restrictions as they've ramped them up, but they've taken their time in allowing them. And I understand it, right? It's frustrating because we are getting into a season where I don't know how many people want to sit outside in a big heavy coat and eat dinner, right? And have drinks. You just don't know, right? We get a sense that younger people, millennials, would maybe want to do that, right? But I don't know if even they will once it gets cold enough. So we're planning for tomorrow based on, we know it's going to get cold. What can we do with that? And we're trying to work with the city to allow some of the things we're doing to last longer than just the end of this year. Maybe give us another year of some extended outdoor dining to help us recoup some revenue when it gets nice out. Aside from that, in the regular ops, like I previously said, we're looking for opportunities. I mean, in this industry, it's crippling a lot of businesses. And we've been fortunate enough to be in a good financial position that we can sustain for a little while before having to go back to investors and, raise capital and things like that. So if we do a good enough job of predicting what tomorrow brings and not too far ahead of tomorrow, we can maintain some cash. And when opportunities come up, we might be able to do something new. Maybe, dive into the takeout and delivery a little more. People are doing ghost kitchens, things like that. And you have to look for every opportunity now. You can't just stay in your lane anymore if you want your business to be successful, right?
Yeah, that's true. Jimmy, what do you see for 2021?
Well, let's see. I can tell you my crystal ball is a little broken, but our economic well-being really is determined, predicated on individual well-being, corporate well-being, governmental well-being. So with budget cuts beginning to happen, with interruptions in the restaurant and other businesses and unpredictability, where people were able to forecast in terms of how they support in the nonprofit world, we depend on support. It makes it very tenuous and unpredictable. So for us, so I find that we, as I mentioned earlier, we have the frequent finance meetings because we find that we have to watch, like I watch the stock market closely because part of me, what I do is I beg for a living. So in one terms, I look at what factors are doing well, what entities are doing well. And I've really, 2021, to answer your question, Liz, I've had to really diversify in terms of who I ask and how I ask. But I think if anything, 2021 means for me sleepless nights because it's continuing. I want to continue to serve our people whose needs are very much intensified and greater than ever. And that means that I have to really find out how I can interact with anyone that has the potential to support what I do. And frugality is the key, but again, pivot is the key also. But with the lack of prediction in terms of if there's a bump, elections are coming and everything else impacts us. I just realized just how sensitive we are when we're not considered an essential to anyone's giving. We're depending on well-being.
Right.
So,
Right.
to answer your question, 2021 has meant a series of, instead of the 5-year plan, the 3-year plan, I've never thought I'd be living off. This is the 30-day plan.
So, you mentioned impact in your response. And so the impact of these changes, what do you see, assuming I'm going to make the assumption that go forward, we start moving back to, I don't want to call it normal, but we start normalizing, let's say. What have you implemented that you see continuing that has worked out really well and you'd like to continue in your business as we move forward? And I'm being optimistic when I say if we start normalizing past the pandemic. Or should I, Jimmy, I'm sorry. I was asking you because you're the one who brought up the impact.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't so sure. Well, as we start, in terms of impact, I think we've really seen, I don't know if we've seen the worst of it, but in terms of normalizing, I call it the new normalizing because I know that, digital will be here to stay in terms of what we do. The way that we reach and interact with everyone from our recipients of our services to donors, that's changed for me. I mean, the face-to-face meetings, I don't think they're ever going to return, but really the bench of really trying to help people that we're doing, I've never seen, such things I didn't, the use of Uber to reach and contact people, to bring people to the office and paying for it, to delivering meals through other alternatives that I've never thought, and to teach literacy courses with a new we're financial literacy, literacy for reading and numeracy, so in workforce. But I never thought that we would have to say our new normal may very well be digital with tools in front that we mail out in advance. So it means I don't think we'll ever return to a normal like we were before. Even if they say we have a cure, I think that's going to be years away.
Okay, I appreciate that. Eric, what do you see continuing forward with your business? What are you going to keep and what has worked out well?
Well, one, I want to assure Jimmy that he's not the only one who begs for a living. I think all of us can kind of relate to that in terms of whether it's customers or employees or investors. Getting people to see our point of view and agree with it is, I think that's a core competency that we all need these days. The communication element of what we're going to continue to do, just the fact that we have made an effort to over communicate as we've built our company. I think that's something that is just absolutely going to maintain its importance. So taking those steps, and we're likely to be in a hybrid environment. So some of that'll be face-to-face and some of it'll be, the continuation of using Zoom or Teams or some of the technology that's there. And it's just, we want to take an opportunity to lead. I think that it's important for everybody on this call as a C-level employee, is that there's an obligation for us to be a thought leader and to deliver positive hope out there that we don't have to say we have all the answers, but we do need to convey that we understand the problems and we understand the challenges and that we're working hard to do it. And then as part of that begging, just to say, here's our view, here's where we're going. And, whether it's using a Zoom meeting more than we normally would, or it's getting people together and in, whatever environment that looks like over the next year, to be able to continually convey that positive message of hope and of a direction that we do have a plan and we are executing on a plan. We're not spinning. So any of the technologies or any of the techniques that help us deliver that message is something that we're going to subscribe to.
Well, how about you?
My response is very similar to those guys, to Jimmy and Eric, in the sense that, we're going to try and be impactful and predict the best we can. And, we're going to take it day by day in the restaurant industry. We've become weather forecasters and things like that. And we also got to figure out how to attract staff and then keep them, right? We've had a lot of people leave the industry, things like that. So 2021 is going to be interesting for us in the sense that I used to be able to put models together and get pretty close. And I thought I was doing really good. And now I wasn't close at all.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I have very understandable investors and a boss. And he's like, great, let's sit down together and just work on it together, because things change daily. And we just have to adapt. We say around here, we're going to figure it out. We will figure it out. We have great people that we work with. We built a solid team. We're going to figure it out. In the restaurant industry, you're just not patient. That's it. You're not patient. You just got to keep going each day and adapt and pivot, and we'll get there.
Okay. No, that's great. So I think the last question I have for each of you is, Jimmy, why don't we start with you? Is there anything specific that you wanted to share with our audience that you'd like them to take away?
Well, I do say earlier, I wouldn't be doing my job as a nonprofit if I didn't call the role that we do and how we really reach out and help. So I can definitely say, and I know, Liz, I see you smiling, because this is where I say, think of your nonprofits and what they do and how our revenues are really derived. We look for grants, but that world has changed. We look for what we do from our governments that we interact. That world has changed. And we look at, actual individual donations and corporate donations. Those four things are really what drive us. And if we're not doing that, we don't have anything. Our role really does support, in the restaurant world where there's been turbulence. Well, we reach out and we help those employees in everywhere we can. So our reach in terms of what we do in stabilizing and working with business, that continues. So I say if there's a takeaway from it is, look us up. We do whatever we can. We reach out, but consider the nonprofit, whether it's Washington Literacy Center or something else. But consider every small thing you do really does matter. And I hope what I really give as one takeaway is understanding that we really do run like a business. It's the back end that's different. But however, on the front end and role and how we support you and how we support work, our own individual missions, that continues. And that has to continue no matter how turbulent and how bad things are.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Eric?
So I would say just keep an eye out for the fact that new facts require new perspectives and a new direction. And the facts and the information that's coming in has been changing, repeatedly, dramatically, and I think it will continue to do that. So stay flexible, stay clear-eyed, and make it set a direction. With the best information that you have, set a direction. Be flexible to be able to change it. And then just communicate it very honestly and very thoroughly. Just let everybody on your team know this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And yes, it might change in 30 days, but
Mhm.
right now, this is where we're all going.
Great. Appreciate that. And Michael?
I would say that to everyone, don't be afraid of the adversity. Like it's okay because it's going to keep coming. Things aren't over yet. Everybody says we're in the middle of it, or maybe it's the end of the beginning of it and we have a ways to go. But just be open to, as Eric said, being flexible, right? And then, like I've been saying, you're going to figure it out. Don't be afraid of the adversity. Embrace it and come up with new ideas. Think outside the box. Think of a different path than you're used to. Things like that, especially for your business. And then just keep motivating people. Keep motivating your employees, your staff, and keeping them engaged is going to be huge through all of this.
Hey, fantastic. I appreciate it. So with that, I will turn this back to Angela to close out.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, Michael, Jimmy, Eric, Liz. Thank you so much. This has been so interesting to me. Audience, before you leave, we are going to do this polling question now. So you need to go on to menti.com. So it's www.menti.com. And then you'll put in the code. It's in the chat area. It was just up there. It's 9608515. And as soon as you get up there, just put in a word or a couple of words of those points that you would love to maybe do a deeper dive or talk more about at the water cooler discussion next week. So it's happening right now. And just in a couple of seconds, as you are all up on menti.com and you're putting in your answers, you will see those come up on the word slide as you start typing them in. So here we go, new tools, that's one. The future. So these are things that we will be talking about as you put those in. We will take a deeper dive next week. Again, it is on October 27th, starting at 5 p.m. If you've not signed up yet, you still have time. And we're just going to take the top 5 of your answers here and do a deeper dive in the hour and a half that we have in that time. So as you're doing that, again, I just want to say thank you to everyone and to our audience for putting in some questions to our speakers. Now has really been a heck of a time for all of you. And I am really so amazed at how all of you have just been able to keep leading, stay strong. You have all been so positive here and in all the planning sessions that we've had, and members, all along with all of the ones that I'm talking to. It's just amazing how amazing we all are. So it's truly an honor to know all of you. Thank you all, and thank you for putting in your answers here. We will share this with everyone, as well as the contact information that you all put into the chat area. Happy to do that. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you so much again. This does conclude the second part of our 3-part series on navigating the new work world. Remember, we have December coming up, and that will be on the state of the economy. And again, with the election right around the corner, it'll be very interesting to see what our economists will be telling us about what will happen in the future. So with that, I'm going to say stay well and stay connected. And this does end our wonderful discussion today. Thank you all. Stay well, stay connected.